She was stuck indoors in isolation, and she looked around at her habitation. No hesitation, grab some fabric and some scissors. It's time for home redecoration. What's going on, friends? I thought I'd share with you all the little house decor DIYs I've been doing right now. There are more where this came from. While I'm pretty used to spending a lot of my time at home, both because I work from home and also being chronically ill, your body doesn't let you go out a whole lot. I'm also not used to spending 24/7 at home. I'm privileged enough to be able to go outside a lot of the time. So I've decided to use being stuck here 24/7 as a good excuse to make some cute DIY things and put them around the house. Working at a reasonable pace, of course, because trust me, if you try and spend quarantine doing 1,000 different things, you'll burn out quickly. Today I'm going to be making a round velvet cushion. I'm trying to secretly, just one by one, start adding kitsch decor items to the house, because literally not a fan of kitsch, but if I just do it one by one, hopefully he won't notice. I found this green velvet in my stash the other day and I knew it had to be used for this because I have been looking at a lot of kitschy home decor images on Pinterest, and these cushions have been a regular feature and they got into my brain, so I had to make them. Let's begin. Alright, so I folded the velvet in half right sides together so that I can cut through 2 layers at once. Then I found something round to trace around. This hat was the largest circular object that I could find in my house, so I drew around it, adding about 1 inch all around because I wanted to make it as large a circle as possible. For reference, my circle ended up being 19 inches in diameter. Remember, the finished cushion will be about 1 inch smaller in diameter because of both seam allowance and it becoming a 3-dimensional object when you stuff it. So draw a larger circle than you want it to end up. Then I cut this out and that gave me 2 matching circles. I left the circles sandwiched together, right sides together, and then I put pins through around the edges through both fabrics to hold them together, and then sewed around it like this, leaving a gap just large enough to fit my hand into. I sewed around the edges with a straight stitch with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance from one side of the gap to the other. Then using some small scissors, I cut notches every couple of inches along the raw edges, making sure not to cut through the thread. This will help it look a little bit neater when turned around because it's a curved edge. The next step is optional, but I found this useful for later on when I'm going to eventually hand sew this gap shut. I press the edges around the gap back 3/8 of an inch with my iron. Then I put my hand through the gap and pulled the fabric out through the hole, turning it right ways around so that the nice velvet side is now on the outside and the ugly raw seams are on the inside. I used a ruler with sharp corners to help me turn it out completely. Now I'm going to put stuffing into the cushion through this hole. I had an old cushion to steal the stuffing from, as well as a few bits of lightweight scrap fabric. I thought this would be the exact amount I needed, but as it turned out, this cushion had a lot of stuffing in it. It was very dense, a lot more than I anticipated, and it felt like clouds. So I put stuffing into the pillow until it felt firm, but with a bit of give. And then I hand sewed this hole shut using a ladder stitch and matching thread. I'll pop a more in-depth tutorial for ladder stitch into the video description because I tried filming this, but with matching colored thread you could not tell what I was doing. Now we have a basic round cushion and it's time to add that sunken button in the center. To make the buttons, I used a button making kit. This kit was originally from Daiso. Again, I'll pop a more in-depth tutorial for how to use button making kits in the video description. So I cut out 2 small circles of the same green velvet using the circle template included in my button kit. I was a little bit worried about the velvet being too thick to work with this button kit, and I was right, it was a struggle. I tried and failed to get this to work many times, but eventually I got it to work okay by making the circle just a tiny bit smaller by cutting down its edges a little bit. Okay, so tips for button covering when your fabric's too thick from this vintage button covering kit from Bert, which unfortunately I didn't find till after I finished the pillow. If your fabric is too thick, dampen it slightly before the assembly or trim fabric closer, which I did try the second one, but I didn't try dampening it, so that could quite possibly help a lot. Anyway, once I finished that, it was time to attach the buttons to the pillow. I marked the very center of the cushion with some chalk, and then with a needle and some green colored sewing machine thread, I put my needle through the center of the cushion. Nope, that didn't work. That thread is too thin and it breaks under the tension of trying to make an indent in the cushion because you have to pull the thread rather hard to make that indent work. So I swapped to a stronger embroidery thread, 3 strands doubled over, so 6 strands in total, and a bigger embroidery needle. Then I tied a big chunky knot in the end of the thread, and then I brought the needle through the center of the cushion and out the other side and back again a few times to create that indent first. This worked a lot better. Also, I figured out while
making my second cushion that this is easier to do while this is still open. Close it up last because you can reach in and pull away the stuffing from the middle while this is still open, which makes this whole bit of going through the middle of the pillow with your needle a lot easier.
After going through the center of the cushion a few times with my needle and thread, I then threaded on one button, pressed it into place in the center of the indent, and then passed my needle underneath the button and out the other side. I thread the other button on and, dang it, the button fell apart. And it was my last button from the kit. The back of this button has now been seriously bent out of shape, and although I tried, the button just would not go back together. Again? So I decided, okay, I have no more of this size of button left, but this top part still looks like a button, so I'll just use a bunch of fabric glue and then glue it onto the middle of the cushion. So I pressed the top of the button into the middle of the cushion with fabric glue, waited a few hours for it to dry, and voila! No one will ever know that it isn't sewn on.
Tying off your knot is, I'm not gonna lie, difficult, but not impossible. Just persevere, and you can do it. You might stab yourself a few times though. Wear a thimble. Or better yet, if you have one, use a curved needle. And of course I did the one that I'm not filming perfectly first time. Well, I had to iron out those kinks with that first one. So that's how I made 2 round velvet cushions with buttons in the middle. And I think they look pretty cute. And subtly kitsch. This project is also my entry to my own challenge, the social isolation prompts, that if you don't know what those are, either check out the Instagram link in the description or the last video. And prompt number 1 is cuddly cushions. Thank you for watching. If you do this or any other cushions, tag me on Instagram and put in social isolation 1 for social isolation prompt number 1, the cuddly cushions, in your captions so that I will actually be able to find and see what you've made. Stay safe and stay crafty. Bye. Isolation. Isolation. Make sure you remember daily hydration. Indoor frustration? Do some gyration. Time to watch some animation. Avoid temptation. Set up a workstation. Play around with face pigmentation. Don't forget online communication. If all else fails, try masturbation. She was stuck indoors in isolation, and she looked around at her habitat.